Good afternoon, boys and girls, and welcome to yet another episode of Adventures of the Broken Retired. I'm Don. I'll be here with my trusty remote, Elmer, and we're going to tell you a little story today. This story is it, it it brings up a lot of other stories that I need to tell, but I'm going to try to stay focused on one. A couple things happened. I went to I used to race I raced motocross, hare scrambles, and enduros. And me and there was a kid that lived next door when I lived out in Watson. And he and I would go racing together. We rode different classes, but we'd go racing. Well, we rode different classes for a while, but we ended up in the same class. It's funny because you start telling these stories and all these other stories start popping into your mind. So I got to tell you this story real quick first. We were out at Fernwood, and me and the kid next door were in a hardcore heavy duty battle not to be in last place. We were the last two on the track. I remember coming up the hill by where they had a mattress on a tree. So if you hit the tree, at least you had a mattress. And I heard the bikes take off from the start line. So we were so far behind. I raced. I never said I was any good at it. We were so far behind that they had actually started the next heat. Came into the last corner. The last corner, there was a downhill, then there was a hard left, kind of a bowl turn that was heavily banked, and then it came up over the jump for the finish. And the ground in that left turn before the finish was packed pretty tight, and he and I had been battling our brains out. I was ahead of him. I was in front. But no, I'm sorry. I lie. He was in front. I was battling, trying to get past him, and I could hear all the rocks dinging as they're bouncing off the front of my bike. I'm right on him. Coming into the corners, sometimes I would actually bump his back wheel or get about halfway up his back wheel, but somehow he just managed to stay ahead until the last corner. And in the last corner, he dropped it. And as I rode by, I pointed to him and laughed. yeah. I didn't take last place. He took last place. That was a lot of fun back in them days. But either way, hang on a second. Either way, that's not what I came to talk about. But hey, I didn't take last. He took last. We'd work on the bikes during the week. I had a shop at my house, and we'd work on our bikes during the week, and get ready for the race on the weekend. He rode motocross. He didn't like enduros or hare scrambles. Some of the hare scrambles were pretty far away. I mean, there was a couple of races that were over 500 miles away each way on a drive. Anyway, we getting ready for the race that weekend, and the night before the race, we have everything we need loaded up. Bikes are on the trailer, not strapped down completely tight yet, but they're on the trailer. I got them covered with a tarp. Everything in the van is packed. It's not perishable. We're ready to go. Actually, it wasn't my van. It was my white Ford pickup truck. We had everything in the back of the truck ready to go, except for the perishable stuff. Got up early. It was about an hour and 15-minute drive each way to the racetrack. So it wasn't that bad, but you had to leave early because you want to get a good spot when you get there. And, you want to have time, and it's fun going to the racetrack, So we got up early, we jumped in the truck, and we drove up there, and we're talking about all kind of stuff on the way up. And we get up to the racetrack, and they weren't racing that weekend. It wasn't their weekend to race. The local tracks all have schedules so that they don't have two tracks running races the same weekend. It's protection for everyone. And we were not only heartbrokenly disappointed, but we were pretty upset because we spent the time getting the bikes ready and got them all loaded up the night before, and went to bed that night with visions of sugar plums dancing in our heads, and then we drive all the way over there, and it wasn't their weekend. But unless you were a racer, unless you were in the circuit, unless you were a regular at the track, you didn't know who was racing when. You could even go to most of the bike shops, and they wouldn't know either. Sometimes they could give you somebody to call, but for the most part, they didn't know either. Well, they say necessity is the mother of invention. And so I made a decision. Now, I'm going to break this for a minute and tell a little bit of a side story, because the side story is very important at this point. A couple of years before this happened, I had run into a guy. He was a publisher of a magazine. It was called Dirt Pilot magazine. He was publisher of the magazine, and I happened to run into him. And I've always liked writing, and I've always looked up to writers. I've always just thought it was a fantastical, fun thing to do. And so here I meet this guy, and he and I start talking. And I was a member of the Southern Enduro Riders Association at the time. And the Southern Enduro Riders Association had a newsletter, and he did a magazine. He also did the newsletter. Going back to the race, moving ahead in time, going back to the race that it wasn't their weekend. The heartbreak was incredible, and I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way to do this. I mean, somebody has to do it. Somebody has to do something. Well, somebody's name is Don, and we had recently purchased a computer at home, Windows 95. It's a gateway computer. I still have it. Still works. So when we got that computer, I sat down behind that thing and thought to myself, a man can make a living with a machine like this, just didn't know how. I had run into that guy who was doing the newsletter. I looked at his work a lot because I liked it. And at the racetrack, we showed up there on the wrong weekend. So all those things coming together, necessity being the mother of invention, you tell you what I did. I decided I would start my own magazine, and I would publish where the races were and when, and a phone number. So here we go. This is a copy, one of the copies of my magazine. This is from May 98. Yep. This is one of the early ones. It's a little thinner. But I decided to publish a magazine. Shortly after I did this, I got a telephone call from the guy that was the magazine publisher writer. He was the guy that was doing the Southern Enduro Riders Association newsletter. I got a call from him shortly after that, like a week after I started doing it. And he said that he was up in his years. He was having some health issues. And he asked me, because he and I had spoken at the racetrack, he asked me if I wanted to take over doing the newsletter. And it's like, yeah, matter of fact, I do. So this is a copy that I made up of the Southern Enduro Riders Association newsletter. And in here is, I'm trying to show you this without making too much of a mess. In here is a lot of keyboard work. Race results, advertisers, people's standings in the series. Little stories, see the top of the page there. Little stories, advertisements, more stories. There's also sign-up sheets where you could sign up for tear it out of the book. Sign up for the race, send in your check, and you're entered. Advertisements for upcoming events, more standings in the series, and just all kind of stuff like that. And of course, there was sometimes contributions from other writers. This went pretty well, and I got paid to do it, and I got paid by the advertisers. There's one on the front, I'm not sure if they're around anymore. One on the back, I'm not sure if they're around anymore either. Now, the Southern Off-Road News, I'm working on it here. I had the contents page, which is really pretty funny. It's meant to have a little bit of humor, you know. And there's a story and a subscription sheet. Stories about this is a column by a guy. I'm going to say his name because I don't think he'd care. Fred Pittman. Fred Pittman is a unique individual, hardcore, dedicated to off-road motorcycling. Really a unique guy and a very talented writer. People would write up stuff and send in. There's where to go in Louisiana to ride off-road. Racing news, track results. See right here? This is all track results. All this right here is all advertisements for where the tracks are and what weekends they race. Anyway, so those are the things that I was publishing. I had to I called the company MediaWise Publishing, and I did that for a while, and then for some reasons I don't care to get into, I ended up having to stop doing it. Turns out you can't have a full-time job and be doing stuff like this. They both came out once a month. You got them in the mail. It was a lot of fun to do. I met a lot of people. But working all day and then being up all night behind the computer, writing stories and setting pictures and getting all the race results together and chasing people down and meeting the deadline to get to the publisher in time for it to be mailed out, going around selling advertising, turned out to be a pretty laborious thing. And one person couldn't do it all. I had a couple people volunteer to try to help me out, but it didn't really help a lot. Of course, I couldn't afford to pay them, so help was few and far between. But they wanted to help. The owners of the tracks were extremely grateful. Because this is free advertising for them. But it was a lot of fun. And I ended up having to give it up just because there's no way you can, and then on the weekends, you got to be at the racetrack every weekend, you know, or at the Enduro, or try to figure out how you're going to do both. So I ended up having to give that up. But anyway, my time is up here. I'm trying not to go two parts. Thank you very much for being here. This is Don with Adventures that are broke and retired. I would have time to do it now. Let's see if we can get out of here in 2 clicks.